I thought I'd start our time together with a fable, a story that probably isn't true, but carries some pretty good meaning. Maybe one that you've heard before. There's a story that goes like this, that there was a young girl who was watching her mother prepare lunch for all the family that was coming over. It was a holiday, right? And so she was going to cook a ham, a great big ham in the oven, and she cut the ends off of both ends off of the ham and put it in the pan and was ready to put it in the oven, and her little daughter said, "Mom, why do you cut the ends off the ham before you put it in the oven?" And her mother said, "You know, I think it's because the juices come out and I can, cook it better in the juices, but I'm really not sure. I just saw my mother, she always cut the ends off the ham. And so I just do it. I learned from her. Maybe you need to call Grandma. Ask her why you cut the ends off the ham." And so the little girl picked up the phone and she called her grandma and said, "Grandma, Mom is cooking a ham and she cuts the ends off. And I asked her why and she wasn't quite sure. She said to ask you." And her grandma said, "You're right. I cut the ends off of my ham before I put it in the pan and put it in the oven as well. And to tell you the truth, I'm not really sure why I do it. I always saw my mother do it, and so I learned from her. Maybe you need to call your great-grandma and ask her why we cut the ends off the ham." And so the little girl hung up, and her great-grandmother was still alive, so she called her great-grandmother and said, "I need an answer from you. Mom cuts the ends off the ham, and so does Grandma, and they said they do it because you always did it. Why do we cut the ends off the ham before we cook it?" And her great-grandmother said, "I cut the ends off the ham before I cook it because I never had a pan big enough to hold the whole ham, and so I had to. And that's why everybody in the family keeps cutting the ends off the ham, even though they have pans big enough now, right? They don't know why they did it. They just kept on doing it, and they lost the purpose. They lost the whole reason behind it. We often, like I started the service talking about, we have these habits, these things that we do all the time, and we often forget why we do them. And I don't want us to forget why we end our service speaking the blessing to each other. Because this blessing that we share together every Sunday is too powerful. It's too beautiful. It's too meaningful and too important just to speak the words without thinking, without understanding, without knowing what we're saying. Do you know where those words come from? Anybody know? We use the same words. Anybody know where we got those words from? Numbers. Exactly, the book of Numbers. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the book of Numbers, that's the time in Israel's history where Moses, God is leading them out of Egypt through Moses, and he's teaching them now how to be his people, how to be a nation dedicated to him. And so Aaron is the very first priest, right? They create the priesthood, and he says to Aaron in Numbers chapter 6, he says, "I want you to use these words to bless the people." Here's what he says. Let me just read them for you. Number 6. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. So they will put my name on the Israelites, and I will bless them." So from that moment on, for now 3,500 years, those words have been spoken. When we say them at the end of a Sunday, we're part of a long tradition. 3,500 years is a long time, and we keep speaking these words. Have you ever really thought about what we're saying when we speak them? It can feel like as we're about to leave on Sunday, right? We've been together, and as we leave, we say, "Oh, by the way, God, be really good to me this week, would you?" I want you just to give me all sorts of good things this week. And it can sound a little bit greedy, can't it? You know, what do we think when we say the Lord bless you? What do we think those blessings are? What are we really asking for? We often think about the physical things we need throughout the week, right? So maybe as we're walking out the door, we say, oh God, for this week, give me some good health. You know, don't let me catch a cold. Take care of my allergies this week. Maybe long term, maybe we're saying, I'd love to live a long life. Is that what we're asking for? Or maybe we're saying, God, bless me this week at work and at school. Help me to get my assignments done. Boy, the school year's ending and there's exams coming and there's tests. Help me get a good grade. Are we asking for enough money this week? God, give me enough money to pay the bills? A little extra wouldn't hurt. Maybe we're thinking, boy, bless me this week, God, with good weather, because I'm going on a hike on Saturday. I don't want to hike in the rain. You know, often we kind of think, the Lord bless you, and we say, God, make my life easy for me. This week, give me good health and give me enough money. That's the blessing I'm looking for. Well, Edgar started our teaching last week about blessing. He kind of reset the definition of blessing for us, didn't he? Right? He taught us that blessings are a favor or a gift from God that bring us joy and contentment that is not produced and is not affected by the circumstances around us. Remember he talked about that? Right? This blessing gives us joy. It doesn't depend on the weather. It doesn't depend on us having enough money in the bank account. It doesn't depend on us getting a successful exam done, project done at work. It doesn't depend on us even being healthy, right? Yes, I don't want us to miss this truth. God does love giving good gifts to his children. We just sang he's a good, good father, right? It's what good parents do. He gives them what they need. Okay? But there's a psalm I want us to look at that takes this blessing deeper than that. Right? More than just those everyday blessings. Psalm 67. If you have your Bibles and wanted to turn with me there, you are welcome to do that, or you can just follow along. We're just going to read a couple verses today. Psalm 67 is a psalm that does teach us specifically about this blessing from the book of Numbers. It gives us that, in this psalm, it gives us two profound purposes that God has in giving us this blessing to continue to ask for and to share together. We're going to look at the first purpose today, and then we're going to look at the second purpose next Sunday. Okay, so verse 1 of Psalm 67 clearly points us back to Numbers chapter 6. Let me just read verse 1. It says, "May God be gracious to us and bless us, and make his face shine on us." Those are almost exactly some of the words from Numbers, the blessing from Numbers 6. Not all of them. Kind of leaves you hanging, right? But the people of Israel would have filled in the rest. Do you ever have somebody sing a song? Maybe they're singing it at home or somewhere, and they're singing away, and they stop before the last line. And usually there's a pause, and then somebody's got to finish it, right? Somebody has to sing that last line, because you can't leave a song unfinished. That's what would have happened with verse 1. The psalmist sings part of the blessing, and the rest of the people of Israel would have thought of the rest in their mind. Okay, so first of all, it says this is about the blessing, and then he gives us a first purpose behind it. Let me just read verses 1 and then verse 2 again. It says, "May God be gracious to us and bless us, and make his face shine on us, so that your ways may be known on earth, your salvation among all nations." So that your ways may be known on earth, your salvation among all nations. So yes, we're invited to ask God to bless us, but did you notice it's not about us? The purpose is not about me. The psalmist doesn't say, may God bless us so that we have a good life, an easy life, so that we experience good things. It says, may God bless us so that other people will be blessed. Right? Did you catch? So that all the earth, he says, so that all the nations will know God. So that we're blessed, we're asking for God's blessing, so that the people around us, the people we work with, the people in our family, the neighbors who live near us, so that they will know God. Here's how it works. God has always worked this way. God blesses his people. God blesses us so that we will show his goodness in our lives to the people around us. And when we give him credit, then they will see God's goodness and know that it is God's goodness. And then they will want what we're experiencing, and they will be drawn to God, and they will find and experience his blessing for themselves. It's the way God has always designed his blessings for his people to work. Right, let me take you further back. Let me go back to Genesis chapter 12. I think Edgar mentioned this last week as well. This is when God first called Abraham. He was Abram at that time. And Abram was the start of the nation of Israel. And God promised him that he's going to make him into a nation, right? He's going to bless them. And listen to the promise that God gives to Abram at the very start. He says, go from your country, your people and your father's household, to the land I will show you. And here's the blessing. It says, I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. That's a great deal for Abram and the nation of Israel, right? God is going to pour his blessing into these people, into this nation. He's going to set them apart for himself. But I didn't read all of God's message to Abram for you there. Because there's a part that comes after this that the people of Israel throughout their history often forgot. And that you and I often forget as God's people. God goes on to say this. And all the people on earth will be blessed through you. God says, I'm pouring my blessing into you so that all the people on earth will be blessed. He never intended his blessing to stop with the nation of Israel. They were to be the channel by which his blessing goes out to the whole world. They were intended to pass that blessing along. And that includes the greatest blessing of all. God gave his son Jesus to the people of Israel, not just for them, but to give salvation to the whole world. They were blessed to be a blessing. And that's why they're encouraged all along, and they're invited to ask for God's blessings for themselves. To ask that God will shine his face on them, which I love that line. God, shine your face. God, look down and smile. Can't you just see God smiling? What an amazing gift that we have a God who looks at us and smiles. So they ask for God's blessing. God bless us in a special way. God smile down on us so that the people around me will see that my life is different. Will know that I'm a follower of you and will see your love and your grace and your goodness in my life, and that they will come and ask me about it, and that they will come to know you, and then they will experience your blessing. they will experience your salvation as well. God, give me your blessing so that I can be a blessing to others, so that I can give your blessing away, so that everyone will know you and your goodness through me. That's the attitude that now, 3,500 years later, we still must have when we ask for God's blessings for us. Because people are watching us. People are watching you, your neighbors, your co-workers, your classmates at school, your children, your siblings, your parents, your spouses. They're all watching you. And when we make it clear that we love Jesus, that we follow him, right, then they wonder, so what? So what difference does that make in life? If God is even real, if he even exists, what's going to be different in your life because you follow him? And they watch. They watch you and they watch me. And we get to answer that question with our lives. We get to show them God's blessings. And yes, sometimes God does bless us with health and long life and financial blessings. And when he does, those blessings cannot stop with us. If they just stop right here with me, then what am I saying to the people who are watching me? Then I'm just showing them my own greed and my own selfishness. Right? God is generous with us so that we then can be generous with them. So that we can, first of all, share God's blessings in our lives. Right? God expects us to be blessing others with the financial blessings that he gives us. Is that how you see it? Maybe you're already doing that. If so, hear God's well done spoken to you today. Thank you for taking my blessing and giving it to others. If that thought makes you pause and say, I'm not doing that so much. His financial blessings are stopping right here. And maybe God's inviting you to say, trust me. You are blessed to be a blessing. Think about what that might look like. Right? We are blessed to be a blessing. God gives us talents and abilities, and every day, time every day, so that we might bless others with how he has created us to be, to serve others in his name with the talents and the time he's given us. How are you doing that? And if something comes right to mind to say, here's how I'm doing it, here's how I responded, here's how I'm taking God's blessing and giving it to others, hear God's well done spoken to you. If nothing comes to mind, then maybe God's inviting you to say, I've blessed you with time and ability so that you can be a blessing to others. Let's figure out how to do that together. And so first of all, as God blesses us, we share that blessing with others. But all these physical things, these life blessings that he gives us, are not always, in fact, they're not usually how God's blessings come to us. In addition to sharing those earthly blessings, we also get to show God's even more profound blessings in our lives. The blessings that shape our lives, that shape our character, that shape us to the core. Sometimes God blesses us with strength to face that huge challenge that's sitting right in front of us. And to face that challenge with courage. What a blessing that is. Sometimes God blesses us with a hope that we really can't explain when we're facing great difficulties or sorrows. Sometimes God blesses us with profound contentment. When the world says we shouldn't be satisfied, when the world says you need more, and God blesses us by saying, you're good. I'm good. What a blessing. Sometimes God blesses us with a community like Mountain View Church so that we know that we're not alone. We know we have a place to belong in his family. Maybe his most amazing blessing is, and maybe you've seen this in someone that you love, is the peace and assurance that we have even when life is coming to an end. Whew, what an amazing blessing. God gives these even more amazing blessings, not just to carry us through life, although that's awesome and I'm glad that he does, but he gives these blessings to us so that we can show the people around us, so that we can amaze them by living a different way, living in God's blessing, experiencing his joy and contentment no matter the circumstances. And that is countercultural. And that will make people say, whoa, I want what they have. I want that blessing. I want to experience that God. And it just reminds me, as we live lives that way, of what Peter writes in the New Testament. He says, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give a reason for the hope you have. Live that hope out. Live that blessing out. And people will ask you, why are you different? It's because God has poured his blessing into my life. That's what it means that we are blessed to be a blessing. It doesn't end with us. And so if we're asking God at the end of the service, God bless me, right, as we share those words, and if we're asking that just so that I can bask in God's goodness, just so I can relax and have him pour his goodness into my life, if that's my only request, then I'm just guilty of being greedy for God's blessings. Because that's not how God intended it. Instead, in this moment, when we speak that blessing, notice and acknowledge how you have been blessed. How deeply God has poured himself into you. And ask, what am I doing with that blessing? How am I sharing it? How am I showing it? How am I living differently? Because God has blessed me. So in just a few minutes, we're going to speak those words again. I want you to think about what you're asking for, what you're hoping for, as we share those words. God bless me. Why do you want it? For your glory or for God's glory? In that request, are you being greedy or are you being generous with God's blessings? Let me remind you. Let me just read verses 1 and 2 again. Why do we speak this blessing? May God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face shine on us. Why? So that your ways, God, may be known on earth and your salvation to all nations. And he ends the psalm with this line. He says, may God bless us still, so that the ends of the earth will know him. Let's pray for that blessing.